Hi guys, today I wanted to talk to you about my favourite book to film adaptations. I'm not really one to watch films, but when I do, I pretty much always watch those same films, and I tend to stick to book to movie adaptations, and I'm quite particular about reading the book before watching the film. I always like to do that, and it sets me a challenge to do, so I always read the book first. So I've got 5 adaptations that I want to talk to you about today. Some of them are adaptations of classics and some are adaptations of YA books. I just love these films and I really wanted to talk to you about them. So the first one isn't really a film, it's a BBC miniseries. It is the 1995 Pride and Prejudice. Now I know this is quite a controversial choice because lots of people prefer the 2005 adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, but frankly I can't stand it and this is my favourite thing in the world. I've never known an adaptation to be as faithful as this. It pretty much details every scene of the book and the characters are so well done, the actors play them really well. It's just my favourite thing. I feel like if I'm a bit sad, feeling a bit down, then this is the perfect thing to watch to cheer me up. It's perfect for a winter or autumn evening. Honestly, it's just the best thing. If you haven't seen this adaptation, then go and watch it. Even if you haven't read the book and you want to see this is a great place to start in terms of classics. If you're a bit nervous about reading them, you want to find out the story first, I would highly recommend this. For those of you who don't know about Pride and Prejudice, I mean, you've been watching my channel so you've probably heard me talk about it quite a lot, but it's about a girl called Elizabeth Bennet whose mother wants to set all her sisters and her up with lots of perfect suitors, and Mr. Darcy comes into the neighbourhood and he's very proud and a little bit prejudiced, but so is Elizabeth, and so they don't really get on, they don't hit it off straight away, but it's a love story, it's a romance with some social commentary too. I don't think it's the best of Jane Austen's works for social commentary, but it's there if you look closely enough. The thing I love most about this adaptation, which I didn't like about the 2005 adaptation, was that it doesn't feel polished and perfect. You feel like you're actually watching the story unfold rather than watching a film. Because with the 2005 adaptation with Keira Knightley as Elizabeth Bennet, I felt like she looked a bit too perfect, like she had perfect skin, she has perfect teeth and hair, and with this adaptation you feel like you're just watching actual people. It does not feel at all like you're watching a film, it just felt so natural and not forced. And the script also is amazing, it just really does bring the whole story to life. I just really love it. Then the next adaptation I want to talk to you about is Far From the Madding Crowd. This is obviously an adaptation of Thomas Hardy's book, which I read earlier in the year, and I watched this straight afterwards and it really enhanced my experience of reading the book and then watching the film, to read and watch them back to back. This is about a woman called Bathsheba Everdeen who is played by Carey Mulligan, and she inherits her uncle's farm and comes into money. She has lots of suitors and makes a lot of wrong decisions, and that's why I love her, because she's not perfect. She is actually quite infuriating at times, but that's why I loved her, because she feels so real, and Thomas Hardy writes her perfectly in the book and that really comes out in this adaptation. The screenplay of this was actually written by David Nichols, who wrote One Day, Start of a 10 and various other books. He also adapted Tess of the D'Urbervilles into a BBC miniseries starring Eddie Redmayne, the one and only, and I really loved that when I watched it about 8 years ago now. It was quite a long time ago, and he just gets Thomas Hardy. He understands where he's coming from perfectly, and I really trust him with adapting any Thomas Hardy book, which I think is a really hard job because Thomas Hardy is such a perfect writer and he really revolves around the landscape and nature, particularly in Dorset or his fictional Wessex. So it's a really tricky thing to adapt that and really include a lot of that into a TV series or film. But I loved the cinematic shots in Far From the Madding Crowd. I loved how you just got this sense of the environment and the place that it's set, and I just think that it is the best thing ever. It's a perfect story, it's perfectly told, and I just want everybody to watch it. And then the next adaptation is a bit different. It's not quite the seriousness of Pride and Prejudice. It is Angus, Thongs and Perfect Snogging, which is an adaptation of the Georgian Nicholson series by Louise Renison. I didn't love the books. I don't feel like they were my favourite series, but I absolutely adore this film, and it's actually one of the instances where I prefer the film over the books, which is very rare. It doesn't happen often, but I love this film so much. It's so funny, so real, and I think it's the best adaptation I've seen of a YA novel. Even if you don't like YA, you'll find this hilarious. I want to laugh just thinking about it. I think the best thing about this is that it's not perfect. Again, this is a theme that's coming up. I don't like to watch adaptations where everything is a Hollywood film. I like to see something that makes me laugh, is quite, I don't know, like on the edge. So it's a real teenager film where they don't make the right decisions. They say things that are slightly like, why did you say that? But you know it's because of their age. And the actors in this as well aren't 30 years old, which is something that happens quite a lot in YA adaptations, and that's very jarring for me as a viewer. I don't like to see someone that looks about 50 playing a 15-year-old. Like, I mean, who makes these casting decisions? But the casting choices in this are great. It's really quintessentially British in a way that is not like touristy like scones and tea, but banter. Like, this is the British banter personified, and that's why I love it. It honestly is just so funny. I want to watch it now. I think I might actually watch it. Another YA adaptation now, and it's pretty cringy, but I just can't help loving it. It is The Host, which is an adaptation of Stephenie Meyer's book. I want to say I love this because it's an amazing film, really thought-provoking and great, but I mean, really it's just because Max Irons is in it and he is the perfect eye candy. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there before we get into any more conversation about the film. The book and film are science fiction about a time when humans are inhabited by aliens, and aliens are inserted into their bodies and take over. And the main character in The Host actually is an alien, but the actual human soul refuses to go away, and so you actually get two people living in one body, which is really interesting narrative style in the book. I didn't love Twilight, it's not the best, but I feel like The Host is a really good book and I feel like it deserves more credit. And the film wasn't the best. I mean, it's not the best adaptation, but it's just one of those films that you can't help but love, even though you know you shouldn't. I love Saoirse Ronan. I think that she plays a good part in everything she does. Just thinking about this, I'm like, Stephenie Meyer, when are you going to write the second book? Because you've promised, and I need another book in this series because the ending is pretty unexpected. I love this film. You can watch it and find out for yourself how cheesy and cliche it is, but that's what makes it so good. Sometimes you need one of those films where you just know it is rubbish, but that's why you love it. And then my favourite adaptation pretty much ever is something that I watched for the first time last year, and it's not a direct adaptation of a book, but it is an adaptation of authors' lives, and it is To Walk Invisible, which is written by Sally Wainwright, who is an amazing British writer, and it's an adaptation of the Bronte sisters' life. I wasn't gonna make this video without talking about the Bronte sisters, was I? I mention them in every video. I'm actually gonna go back and count, and I'm pretty sure I mention the Brontes in every single video I make. I'm obsessed, and this film, it makes me cry every time because you get to the end and I'm like, no, they can't die. I mean, I know they die because I know the history, but it hurts every single time I watch this. This talks about the time when they were writing their novels. So it's a time when the Brontes came together, they'd been away in Brussels, they'd been away teaching, and so they all come back together. It's a time when Branwell, he's spiralling into depression and alcoholism and into drug addiction, and out of this comes their novels, comes Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights and Agnes Grey. And it's all about their journey to publication, writing as women, but using male pseudonyms. And I think one criticism I have seen about this is that it very much focuses on Branwell, but I really like that side of it. I don't think that's something that is explored a lot. Branwell is very often overshadowed, and when he is portrayed, it's as this really mean alcoholic who is addicted to drugs and is really horrible and is just this bad person. And what To Walk Invisible does is add nuance to his character and really shows him as a real person. It's really difficult to adapt something where there's real people involved, where you've seen portraits of them, where you've got this image in your head of what they look like, and to have someone go, okay, we're going to cast someone who's supposed to look like them, you have to really put your trust in that person's hands. But the casting in this was done perfectly, and Adam Gatiss, I mean, he is Branwell in my head. If you look at portraits he did of himself, Adam Gatiss perfectly captures that, I think. And they are also great because the thing that Sally Wainwright said that she wanted to do when she cast them was have people, again, like I mentioned earlier, who didn't look perfect, who weren't glossy models. They are actually real people, and they perfectly capture how the Brontes would have looked, how we think they would have looked. I would really love to see a prequel of this that explored their earlier lives, maybe as they were children, because it's something that's touched upon in here, but maybe not as much as I wanted. I would watch a 5-hour Bronte adaptation. I'm all down for that, but it was perfect. You couldn't fit any more in, but I would love to see a prequel that explored more of their earlier lives as they were in Brussels and Anne was at Thorpe Green, and what happened when Anne and Branwell were there, and more about how Branwell turned to this alcoholism and drug addiction. I love the Brontes, so of course I love this. And I have heard a tale that Sally Wainwright is going to adapt The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, which I'm so excited about. I really need that adaptation in my life. So those were some of my favourite book to film adaptations. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty weird to talk about films. I don't know when the last time I talked about films was on my channel. I always talk about books, and it was book related. Still got to talk about Thomas Hardy, still got to talk about the Brontes, still got to talk about Jane Austen, but it was pretty weird to talk about films. I'm not used to it. Could I be a film reviewer? Career change happening here. So in the comments below, let me know your favourite book to film adaptations and we can have a big discussion of it. Give me some recommendations based on my favourites. What do you think I would like to watch next? So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. Happy reading and happy watching.